The next case we're going to be talking about is the disappearance of Tina Lim Sin Ying. Before we truly dive into the nitty-gritty of this case, I want to set the stage for this case a bit. I want to tell you all about what happened to Tina, what was happening around her house, stuff like that, so you can get a better understanding of what truly happened. Tina, by all accounts, was a pretty normal girl. She had friends and a loving family, particularly the grandfather, who really loved Tina, though the grandfather was suffering from cancer at the time. However, there was one family member who Tina just couldn't get along with, that being her stepmother. Though she was on good terms with her father, apparently she felt like she had nobody to confide in the family, and hence spent most of her time locked up in her room. Tina was also spending way more time talking on the house phone with friends whom the father referred to as bad influences. And every time the father would come into the living room and see Tina talking on the phone, Tina would hastily hang up the phone call. Tina has also stated that she would much rather prefer live with her biological mother, who was divorced with her father at the time when she got older. Got all of that? So essentially, we have a girl who, even though had friends and family who enjoyed her company, still expressed some form of not wanting to be at home, or at the very least, some sort of unhappiness. So yeah, we have a 14-year-old girl going through all of this, so keep that in mind. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that this happened in June 2002, and Tina was 14 years old at the time. So sorry, I forgot that crucial detail. My bad. So anyways, fast forward, day of the incident, June 2002. Tina's father saw Tina at the house phone doing phone calls with her friends. Just calling her friends. And once Tina saw the father, she'd hastily hang up the phone. And on that day, the father decided to suggest to Tina, hey, maybe you should go visit your grandfather at the hospital since you know he has cancer and all that stuff. And Tina agreed. Before she left home, she took a bit of money with her and went off. And you know the story, she disappeared. However, the story doesn't end there. Roughly a year after Tina's disappearance, her grandfather sadly died from cancer. And the family went to the newspaper and told Tina through the newspaper and said, hey, you know, it was your grandfather's final wish to see you at his funeral, so come on down and pay a bit of respect, will you? On the last day of the week of the funeral, Tina's father received 10 phone calls. Now, each phone call had varying amounts of actual conversations, though the family was able to record a few of the calls. And the family did recognize the voice as belonging to Tina. One of the phone calls stated that she was in Singapore but didn't know exactly where the place was, and that the place was very dark, and that she also couldn't come back as someone wouldn't let her. Multiple family members tried to talk to Tina through the phone call and tried to persuade her into coming back, however it didn't work. And one newspaper reporter heard the recorded phone calls and described Tina's voice to be a hoarse whisper, and as if she was afraid someone would overhear her. So essentially, it's like Tina was in a state of distress when she was making those calls, if you couldn't tell. Afterwards, the police traced the phone calls back to a flat in Pasir Ris. However, after the police interviewed the family members, it was revealed that they actually did not know who Tina was, what phone call they were talking about, stuff like that. So they were kind of clueless. Tina was presumed dead 7 years later, and this case remains unsolved. Okay, let's go on to the theories. First theory was that this was a planned runaway. Okay, so a lot of missing people's case, this is the first theory that gets brought up. But most of the time, this is just really unlikely. Though, I feel like in this particular case, it is something to talk about. Damn. Okay. Maybe the reason why she would quickly hang up the phone whenever she saw her father arrive was because maybe she was planning some sort of escape plan with the friends that her father referred to as bad company. Because remember, she was having some troubles at home. So maybe that's a plausible solution, though I will say, based on my personal opinion, I feel like it's not a person's first instinct to be like, hey, let's run away from home once they encounter some family trouble. Or maybe this was just like a temporary solution. Who knows? Another theory was that maybe Tina was hiding out with her mother, since if you remember just now, like I said, Tina did say she'd prefer to live with her mother. However, when the police interviewed Tina's mother, she just flatly refused any involvement with Tina's disappearance. So there's that. However, all these running away theories make slightly less sense when you realize that A, she didn't bring her passport, she didn't bring her clothes, and she didn't bring more than $50 with her. Secondly, her friends did say that Tina wasn't the type to break a promise, and Tina also wouldn't really miss an opportunity to go see her grandfather. So yeah, that definitely casts some doubt on this theory. Or maybe this was just like a one-off thing. Maybe Tina just didn't want to visit her grandfather that day and just went off somewhere with her friends or by herself. Or she might have been picked up by a third party, which we're gonna get into right now. People believe the abduction theory mainly because of the fact that, you know, that phone call that was made at the funeral. So I don't blame them. However, people have expressed skepticism over this phone call as, okay, number one, in the phone call itself, right, Tina was described to be in a very distressed state. However, if somebody was truly watching over her, they would have just noticed that Tina was in a very panicky, very distressed mood and just flat out stopped the conversation right there. Or maybe, you know, this was just a case of where the kidnappers were like, haha, we got the girl, we got Tina, and look, we let her speak the phone call. We are so clever, ha ha ha. Because if you remember, in the McDonald's boy case, the parents of the boys got a phone call, supposedly the kidnappers, and they were like, hey, you shouldn't hope to see your son. Maybe it's something like that. Secondly, if she wasn't being watched over and managed to sneak away and get a phone, why didn't she immediately call the police? Because if I was in her shoes, I would do that. But keep in mind, I don't want to be in her shoes if she was actually kidnapped. So I don't want to be in that stimulation or simulation. So I'm sorry, I don't know if that's the case. Okay, moving on.